It is not albinism. It is not a cancer. It is not witchcraft. It is not that one has HIV/AIDS. It is not contagious. Does not spread through close contact, touching or sharing personal items. No way is it linked to being burnt by twins. It is called vitiligo.
Vitiligo is when a patient presents with part of his body has lost color.
Living with vitiligo has been sometimes challenging when I got older, but when I was younger it was a bit, okay. But as you get older, you feel the stigma around you, even yourself, you start self-stigmatizing.
I started small spots and immediately people said it's abalongo. It was too much on me. Others would say that I aborted twins.
2009, that's how it started on my skin with small patches, and I thought it was ringworms.
My first pose that made me famous was this one. My second pose that made me famous was this pose. I was just like this. People loved it so much.
UBC, inspiring Uganda. The Property Line, everything real estate, construction, class, and luxury.
Real estate, it's land and developments on land.
We are now, as a country, in an auto-drive mode with respect to real estate.
We have a deficit in housing of more than 2 million units.
For the real estate, when you have income, I want you to contribute something.
Don't miss The Property Line every Saturday 7:30 p.m. and Monday 11 a.m. only on UBC TV. Inspiring Uganda. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
A very warm welcome, and it's a good evening, the clouds are reading good and good weather. My name is Charles Odongso, you are moderator yet again this evening. This Wednesday, the 29th of March 2023, today we come back to you again with yet another important discussion, a subject that affects your life. Many people would not like to know or do not know how much the energy sector or the power sector, as is commonly called, affects their lives, their day-to-day lives. The economic, implications are enormous that power causes to this country. And without power, of course, we cannot run as a country. You can't run the industries, you can't run homes. Life certainly comes to almost a halt. Today we are going to be looking at the latest in the energy sector is that government of Uganda took back from Eskom, Nalobale, the former Owen Falls Dam, and Kira power stations took them back 20 years after, you know, the unbundling of UEB that led to a number of entities being created. We have now transmission, we had generation, we had distribution. All those were created as a result of the unbundling of UEB. These are all matters, dynamics that are related, and we will be discussing them. We will also discuss the whether Uganda or the people of Uganda are getting value for money from the different investments, the huge investments in the power sector. We will be discussing the big question that many of you ask, Bujagali, and we will be also touching on to what extent has Karuma Power Station, the new incoming power station, the progress of it. To discuss all this, let me start from my far left. We have in the studio Honorable Herbert Tayebwa. He is MP for Kashonji County in Kiruhura District. Herbert is a certified accountant, and you're most welcome to this maiden appearance that you make on this show. Herbert, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much.
Good to have you. We have in the studio Honorable Omara Paul. You all know him very well. He doesn't need too much introduction on this show. Omara Paul is MP for Otuke County in the Great Lango region. You're most welcome back, Omara.
Well, thank you, and good evening, viewers.
Good. Next to Honorable Omara is Engineer Emmanuel Sanden Subuga. He is from the Ministry of Energy. He's Principal Energy Officer in charge electrical generation. Is the man, the technical man who speaks generation, who speaks perhaps, you know, in terms of megawatts, kilowatts. If we don't know, then this is the man to answer all those questions. Engineer, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers.
Good. And finally, we have Counsel Mercy Munduru Grace. She's a lawyer, but an interesting lawyer as far as the energy sector is concerned. Mercy has did her master's, I think, in energy law. What a study, you know, and very interesting that Mercy finds time despite her engagements in West Nile. She has put together an illustrious team that has been putting the ministry on tenterhooks, the Ministry of Energy, that West Nile needs power and we need it now on the national grid, no less this time. And Mercy, you're most welcome to the show again.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start the discussion. But for you out there who is going to be following, we are streaming live via YouTube. And that's UBC Television Uganda on YouTube. But you can also join us through hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. That's hashtag UBC Behind the Headlines. And on Twitter, if you want to send me a message or comment, kindly send the message through 0709 602592. I will repeat that contact. 0709 602592. Let me start with a brief background to this, and I want then I invite Engineer Sande. I was doing some reading, and I looked at some of the reasons for which UEB was then unbundled. Some of the reasons it was accused of: financial things like inefficiencies, lack of adequate capacity, low numbers of household connections to power, unreliable or poor quality of power supply, you know, issues of corruption, you know, so many things that UEB was accused of. Then 20 years down the road, the question is, have we done enough that now it is prudently important that UEB should be restarted? In other words, is it prudent that this country should take back Nalobale Power Station and Kira Power Stations? Can we now manage them? Have we built capacity? Have we plugged those earlier loopholes? Tell us, Sunday.
Thank you very much. The actions of decisions of government then, in 1999 and slightly below that, was to improve efficiency. So the main decision was around how do you effectively and sustainably and optimize the operation of the power sector. So a vertically integrated system, which was Uganda Electricity Board, which you refer as UEB, had the mandate to distribute, to transmit, to generate, and to regulate itself within the system that was then there. It was important then to look at possibilities of policy, legislative, institutional rearrangements that will better improve the power sector. So what the decision then was is to be able to unbundle the vertically integrated UEB, to be able to, first of all, to improve efficiency in terms of institutional arrangement, to provide room for legislative changes and also policy amendments at the time. But more importantly, to also attract private investment, which was largely missing because this was a utility purely owned by government. So what government did after 1999, actually in 1999 was first to enact, put in place Electricity Act of 1999, which provided for the formation of a regulator through the Electricity Regulatory Board, provided for the formation of a Rural Electrification Fund, provided for the formation of an Electricity Dispute Tribunal, and of course paved way for the unbundling of UEB into the three utilities you've mentioned, which is Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited, Uganda Electricity Transmission Company Limited, and Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited. Moving forward from that point, government established the Electricity Regulatory Authority, which of course is headed by the Electricity Regulatory Board, and eventually the Rural Electrification Agency, because within the Act there was a provision for a Rural Electrification Fund that paved way for the creation of a Rural Electrification Agency. And then eventually in 2002, policy amendments, the introduction of the Electricity Energy Policy of 2002, and in 2007, the introduction of the Renewable Energy Policy of 2007. So you see, institutional framework was rearranged, policy framework was rearranged, the legislative framework was rearranged, and regulatory framework was rearranged to be able to provide for a more efficient system that would enable government to operate more efficiently, but also for the private sector to be able to invest. And following those revisions in the frameworks, we have seen a lot of investment in the generation department, private investment in the generation department, a lot of independent power producers producing largely in the small hydropower sector are private. And also not only in hydro, solar co-generation by the private company, sugarcane companies like Lugazi here, Corporation, Sugarcane Corporation, Kakira, and the others. But also we have seen an influx of private capital in the distribution sector. And I am not talking exactly about the concessioning of the government facilities which were within the urban areas that went to UEDCL and eventually concessioned out to Umeme. But we see in West Nile there's Wenreco. We have seen Kalangala Infrastructure Services in Kalangala. We have seen Pader Corporate Company Services. We have seen Chegegwa and the others. So there has been an influx of private investment that resulted from those legislative, policy, institution, and regulatory framework amendments of that time. And that was the intention. But for anything that is said, lesson must be learned. And I think where we have reached, some lessons have been learned, and based on our experiences from that moment now, government has made certain decisions that there may be need for additional public investment into the sector compared to what had been envisaged at the time, which was that the private sector could take a lead. Of course, we've been informed by the tariff, and we've said, okay, fine, how do we well deal with the issue of tariff? Maybe government can play a better role. We have been informed by the rate of access to energy, that even though you build the Karumas, the Bujagalis, and generate power, how do you get the final person to use the power? And in able to do that, you need to be able to provide a framework where people can afford the power. And for government to let it purely be run by the market economy, in an economy like ours, may not yield the results that were intended to be yielded. And therefore, government needs to play a role there. And because of such information, there has been a revision in the policy, which I hope we shall be able to discuss as we go forward.
Good. Councillor Mondoro, the different developments that Engineer Sande is listing down, do you feel them? Are these developments that you think have progressed well, and are we at a point where now we can say, let's walk on our own? How do you read the sector from your study?
I think, as he's rightfully stated, right from 1999, when we chose the route of liberalization for the energy sector, we had good intentions at that time. And so liberalization of the sector was looked at as a welcome idea, especially given the fact that at that time we were struggling with UEB, and therefore there was need for us to disbundle, but also improve, especially the efficiency in the sector and also reliability in the sector. So the intention was very good, and at the front of it, the establishment of the different agencies, but also government's investment in improving the institutional framework, the legal framework around it, and its functionality was well intentioned. But as you can see, that the concept of liberalization is not one that you can leap into and expect to come out without a bruise. And I can say that from the time that all these processes took off until now, there have been a couple of very mind-blowing discoveries with this concept. First of all, I think several studies and inquiries have revealed loopholes in that process right from the onset. We know that at that time, the Ministry of Finance spearheaded that process, especially the privatization unit was at the forefront. And right from, the process of procuring these different private sector players that now became central in these discussions that we're having today, there were very many flaws. And I remember a particular inquiry in 2011 by the Parliament of Uganda that had very revealing details about these procurement processes and some of the flaws in especially the power purchase agreements that were looked at as, recipes for danger in the coming future. And true to those assertions today, we have come to this place not because we chose to, but also because I think government is now in a place where they realize that perhaps we jumped too far, and we are now in a place where we've learned and we want to reorganize ourselves and come back perhaps based on the learnings from this process. One of the maybe positive outcomes from this process was the fact that, for example, ESCO, when they came, they did a lot of work in terms of capacity building. I think from where they found UEB at that time to now, the number of skilled personnel in that sector has grown immensely. But also the creation of these agencies have brought in different technocrats who are Ugandan bred. And I believe that is an advantage to the sector. And that may be partly what can give us confidence that perhaps things could work differently moving forward. But also, I believe that there have been very big flaws, especially in the power purchase agreements and other related processes such as the different agreements and amendments that have been made along the way, in which government has realized very huge financial losses, but also the way that the companies evade accountability, yet we still continue to grapple with issues of efficiency. And one of the central discussions and concerns has been also the issue of tariffs. And many of the interventions have been really prioritized because government has thought that they would lead them closer to reducing the power tariffs, but that has not worked the way it was anticipated. And so government now moving and taking a U-turn and wanting to undo this and move, in my opinion, should be informed by lessons. We need to have a very serious introspection of the sector and see what has really worked and what has not, but also appreciating the fact that this is a very specialized sector, and government has processes and bureaucracies that sometimes can easily stand in the way of efficiency as well. So even moving in this direction means that there will have to be a lot of flexibility in operationalizing this reversal of what we had moved away from in terms of liberalization. But also the bigger question of accountability, which is a whole issue in the public sector, because we can't have these discussions without several transparency and accountability related issues. As you know, there's been a lot of evidence of dealings that are just not very clear, and a lot of money has been lost in the process, and there's been connivance and evasion of taxes and all of this. That means that within the sector itself, just like the other sectors, there are questions around transparency and accountability. So moving back into this space also means that we have to clean the space of that for it to be effective. Otherwise, we may go back and then we may fail to deal with the very reasons why in the first place we decided that we wanted to liberalize the energy sector in 1999.
Okay, Honorable Tayebwa, Mercy refers to questions of lack of accountability, questions of inadequate transparency in the energy sector, in the dealings. She refers to, of course, the power purchase agreements, and that perhaps we jumped too far in her words. Very interesting description there. Are there things we can talk about? Are there things from a people's representative perspective, as an MP, from Parliament, as an oversight, the person who does the oversight? Are there things that we can touch and say, these are good to, make government get back this contract, or that I would have cautiously gone for this move?
I thank you, first of all. Like Arya said by Engineer Sunday, government went into liberalization because it was looking at efficiency and effectiveness of the operation of these government institutions then. And that's why many of them were abandoned. The thinking was at that time that government is not good at business. So the thinking was that if these institutions are handed over or liberalized to the hands of private people who are efficient in management, they will be very effective, they will be do business at a minimal and marginal cost, and things would run on well. However, that's what happened then. UEB was disbanded. We formed UEGCL, UETCL, and UEDCL. Yes. What do we see then? UEGCL decided to get a concession. The generation now was, they got a concession of Chira and Narubert, former owned Force Dam, right? Yes. To ESCOM, to run it. UETCL remained operating, but now as a sort of like private. UEDCL got a concession to Meme. So what have we seen? Has the power tariff reduced as a result of liberalizing energy, the power sector?
No.
The answer is no.
Over all these 20 years.
Over all these 20 years. And what happened is this, is that this person called Umeme, whom you think is going to run this business, as a private person, with efficiency and effectiveness, you forget that his main objective is to maximize profit. As a private person, his objective is to maximize profit. Therefore, if you are maximizing profit, your intention is not to give out a social service.
Yeah.
You will have to put in whatever you put in, and that will make the tariff go up. Now, we find the same thing with these other liberalizers. We shall come to the topic of Ujagara and we shall also discuss about it. So, what has government seen? Government has seen that yes, we liberalize, but things have not come out the way we thought they would come out. And that's what Engineer Sandy was saying, that as you do something, you learn lessons. So I think government has now learned lessons. He said, we thought we would take this path of liberalization, let's privatize, let's have efficiency, let's have effectiveness, and let's have things run well. But things have not worked. And I think that's the reason why we are now getting back to bundle again. Actually, everything now is getting back to the Ministry of Energy. The other time we had the minister and he was telling us how they had disbanded electrification. So, but the question remains, the reason why it failed then, before 1998, when they liberalized it, have those reasons been cured?
Good question, and that's what I want us to
Have they
answer.
been cured? Because at that time there is a lot of bureaucracy, there is a lot of systems and policies. They were not adequate. And you know, to come up with a decision, to come up with a program, it would take long in government, you know? So, have they been cured? Now, if they tell us that the government has cured that, then we can comfortably think that the rebundling now is going to improve on efficiency and effectiveness.
And that's the big question that for me, I am interested in getting us to really answer in this discussion. Okay, I will come back to each of you, but let me ask Honorable Paul Omara. When you look at those issues, let's go back to 93 when PAD is enacted. The Public Enterprise and is it Public Enterprise and Divestiture Act. The thinking is that these new entities are going to improve efficiency. Like Sandy said, they're going to bring in foreign investment, and they will also spur local investments, which we have not seen, have we? We have not seen, in my view. Hence the coming in, of course, of other players, including ESCOM, Meme, and the rest. But the question for the local ordinary person remains, why have the tariffs remained high? And you may even have to share with us what is our tariff level in comparison to the region, comparison to Africa, if you like, perhaps even compared to the globe, because I'm told we are high up there, poor as we are, and with many dams as we have. So where are we at? Would you encourage the rebundling? What would be the alternative in your view?
Charles, and good evening, viewers again. Charles, the issue of the energy or power in Uganda, just like in any other sector that was liberalized, including banking sector, and remember that part covered all government parastatals at the time.
Sure.
And this, I would dare say, the issues of efficiencies, of creating systems and structures for energy efficiency could be a number of reasons provided by government. But I would dare say that the mover and the shaker at the time was IMF and World Bank prescribed policies. And remember, the NRM government, when they came to power, they had a kind of, in terms of orientation, They had a socialist orientation. They were still having that spirit of Ubuntu, but they soon realized one thing. They didn't have the money to run the government. And so the IMF came and said, you know, you want more money? We don't believe that these public enterprises should be run by government. We want the private sector. You need to liberalize these entities, including the UCB, and you can name them. There were many. All public enterprises were liberalized. And this one also, the UEB and the associated entities became victims of that big liberalization policy, which was basically prescribed and pushed by the World Bank and IMF. So at the time when you're just running a government and you don't have money, you need loans, and there are conditions, there are conditionalities to it. The government had to accept and said, okay, if this is what you mean, and actually even the President Museveni has regretted publicly that I should never have sold UCB. Now, for me, UEB, or power generation sector and distribution, actually is one of the most strategic areas of investment that should never have been given to private sector. We have alluded to some of the positive outcomes where my brother, engineer Sunday, is saying we have now brought very many private sector to play in the power area. But I can tell you, as my sister said there, the power generation agreement is normally skewed. One of the conditions that they put is that we are going to put power, like the one of Bujagali. They said we are going to build a 250 megawatts power station. Number one, US government must take all of it. You must guarantee that you're going to take all the power. So everyone who is coming from the private sector is relying on government, on the people of Uganda to pay off any debt that they would collect. So Bujagali comes, is producing, the power station capacity is 250, they are producing 160, but they will charge you at 250 at the established capacity. They're saying, yes, you agreed to pay, you've guaranteed us 250 megawatts. Even if we are producing 160, please pay us at 250. And they have. But
who are those who use negotiate?
They have hemorrhaged the country over a period of time, over this 20-year period. You need to look at the numbers. And they caught us at a time when actually, as a country, we were poor.
We're desperate.
We were desperate. They found us. It's just like you're going into a home where there is gold. The children are poor, like it's happening in Congo. You just land in there with your planes and your military. You find naked people and they have gold. You can give them anything, and the peanuts. You excavate until they realize, oh, okay, now I think we have given a semblance of money to them, back to them. They are beginning to realize we had taken too much from them. Okay, let us go. We've taken enough. So I think I am not one of the people that would applaud these energy companies that they have done a fantastic job. They got us when we were very poor, we were in a very weak position, and you need to look at the agreements we signed. Sometimes we blame our public officials. How dare in the world did you sign on this document? Look at Obeme contract, for example. It was a rip-off.
But it had a,
look at the Bujagali.
But it did have a clause for renegotiation. Why can't we renegotiate?
No, those clauses are never there.
We are going to talk about Bujagali. We look at those provisions. We went back to school to look at Bujagali. And we only find one area. I think they just might have been sleeping. That is when we caught them. But if you look at the detail of the agreements, they were so precise. They were so careful. And making sure our hands were tied while they are taking resources from the country. So what am I saying? Is that we could have strategically done if you wanted to streamline UEB, as my engineer Sanders said, they were the ones doing regulation, they were the ones doing generation and distribution. Okay, you created other entities. Then why do we have to give it away to to some sectors, some private sectors to come and do it for us. And in the end, we lose so much in billions of dollars over the years. And by the way, we continue to make the same mistake even today when we are entering into a new arrangement. And I thought at the time we did not have a serious human capital development. People could look at the matrix and say, okay, here we are being ripped off. Now we have very intelligent people. Engineer Sunday is here. And we have built the capacity over the years. Now, why are we still making the same mistake? As my brother, Honorable Tayewa said, do we still have corruption in the government systems? Why do we sign contracts that really hemorrhage the country, take away our capital, which we should be using for developing our country? So I am not personally not impressed, given what we have seen in one sector. If you look at Bujagali and look at Omem, there were no patriots there who signed on those contracts. So I think going forward, I am one person who is very happy to see that we take over our power sector. We have enough resources to run it and human capital to run it. The engineers are here. They can run it efficiently, and then we need to drop the power. For example, in the case of power tariff, at the moment, how much do we have current tariff? 8.49 cents per kilowatt hours. The president is actually targeting that we should at least have 5 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, that would help us to industrialize and transform the country. At the moment, since independence, we only have about 5,000 factories producing at low capacity. The cost of production is high. Our goods are uncompetitive on the account of expensive tariff. Now, if you liberalize and you say, okay, when we do these things, we will finally have low tariff, we will industrialize, it's not happening. So Charles, we will talk about Bujagali shortly, but you will see that there was overpayment to Bujagali. The tariff now actually should be at 5.72 cents per kilowatt hours. And even if we were to include the tax waiver which we had put there, it will still come down to 6.55 cents per kilowatt hours. But even as I talk now, Uganda Electricity Regulatory Authority, based on the submission that we made in Parliament on those tariff changes, should by now, they should have implemented. The minister should have acted by now to making sure the calculation on the tariff payments is done with what we have recommended as a committee, actually adopted by Parliament, so that the tariff can come down, and so that the cost of electricity, if you pay 50 shillings on your yaka, it should take you a month. But you put 50 shillings and in less than 3 days it's gone. Because there's fictitious figures that is hemorrhaging the country. So power sector must be looked at carefully, and I believe that the president is concerned just like all of us. And when we find something like that, there is an anomaly, then the executive must act so that the country can benefit from it. I submit.
Engineer, thanks, Honorable Paul. Engineer Sunday, why the high tariffs? Why can't it be brought down all this time? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Charles. First, I must appreciate the submission from the two honorable members of Parliament and from Council. And these are matters of national importance.
True.
And it's very, very, very touching that we all feel the same way. Even us in the energy sector, we feel the same way. And if you follow the trajectory of the policies that we have enacted, the actions that we have taken, you would see that we are constantly trying to fight the problem of this. Now, getting to your question, why the high tariff? A tariff is an amalgamation, a summation of generation. How much money does it cost to generate a unit of power? How much money does it take to transmit it on the high voltage lines? How much money does it take to distribute it? But there are also other factors in there because we have the exchange rates, inflation rates, cost of fuel for where we are producing using fuel that is imported, and those vary, especially now that we have global challenges. You'll find that the cost of fuel is changing. So those have changed. But the electricity sector historically suffered a blackout around 2005. And of course, the history of this country could be the reason why by 2005, we were still not prepared with enough generation capacity to meet the challenge that we faced. You know, when the lake levels went low in 2005, we were plunged into load shedding. And we load shedded between 2005 up to about 2013 until Bujagali came in. And again, we shall discuss Bujagali at a later stage. Now, in the moment when you are taking fire and you have load shedding across the country, we went almost to 160 something megawatts by 2013 of load shedding. You are thinking of how do I solve this problem? And when somebody says I can come and bring you a diesel generator and install it in 6 months' time and give you some sort of relief, you are likely to go for it. So the energy sector, like many other sectors, is not an angel of any sort. It has suffered its own rash decision makings at times. So during the period 2005-2013, the focus was on how do we eliminate load shedding. And temporary decisions included taking in expensive thermal power plants. Okay? Some of the temporary decisions also included developing power at the existing terms and conditions of the time. And when somebody comes to you and you're begging for salt, and salt normally costs you 200,000 shillings, you may most likely buy it at 250. So we are not saying that everything has been perfect. There have been conditions that were beyond the control that made us make certain decisions, not intentionally to fleece the people of Uganda, but to offer a solution. So those expensive thermal power plants that came on board resulted into high tariffs because they were a stopgap measure at the time. And if we had not taken those solutions at the time, then maybe the situation should have been much worse. But I want to talk about what we are doing, because it is very easy to tell the story of what we have not done or how wrong things went in the past. That's very easy to tell. But what are we doing to bring back down these tariffs? There are a number of things. One of them, we start from the generation side. We say, how do we introduce optimal sustainable energy production, which is clean, what's the sustainability of it? We are looking at cheap technologies. We have introduced solar. We have continuously gone down the learning curve in terms of tariff for that. We are developing, government has invested money in Karuma and Isimba, which are below 5 US cents per kilowatt hour, among others. And therefore, the weighted average costs of generating power in this country has gone down by introducing big power generators that are producing at lower cost. But we also let the expensive ones go. They are Grecos of this world. They are no longer here. They will still be here. So by letting them go, we were reducing the cost of generating power. So that is the first step. The second step within still the generation is that we had take-or-pay deals, which the honorables have raised, where we, you know, naturally, if you're negotiating a power deal, it is based on project financing of debt and equity. And normally, you find yourself in a situation where you must guarantee return on investment. And to attract investment into our power sector at the time, we went for take-or-pay deals, among others. Today, whatever deals we are negotiating for power, we have removed that deemed energy clause. We don't offer any more issues of if you don't take, then it's deemed energy. That is out of the way. So it's part of the lesson that we've learned. In the transmission sector, which was largely left to government after the liberalization that Council has talked about, we are saying it is the loss involved in transmitting power at high voltage technically is lower than if you transmitted it at lower voltages for longer distances. So the issue is develop the high voltage transmission lines, create a backbone around the country that is high voltage, so that the distributors don't have to move very long distances to transmit. By reducing the cost, the money lost in losses, because a loss is this, I can explain it to you, Charles. It means that you got 100 at point A and only 80 got at point B. But you're still paying for 100. So whatever you've lost along the line is still paid for. Now that, technically as engineers, we can reduce it by making sure we transmit at very high voltages. And now that's what we are doing. We're building a backbone of high voltage transmission network around the country to reduce on the distance of the distribution network. Then we get into the distribution network, which I know is a very hot topic, and how we have performed there. Of course, one of the challenges that we had to deal with at the very start was commercial losses. Commercial losses under UEB, for those who say, what did you change on UEB? One of the biggest challenges UEB had was commercial losses. You would spend months, years without seeing a bill. Or even if it was brought, no one comes to collect it. That commercial loss that I can use electricity for months and months and months, and I never pay for it and there's no consequence against it, was a very dangerous thing. So that's one of the efficiencies we introduced. I think with Umeme, it's much different. You receive your bill more often, and not necessarily with Umeme, with the current setting, because we have other players other than Umeme within the distribution sector. So we reduced commercial losses. We have worked on technical losses because people were stealing a lot of that electricity. When UEB comes and removes their fuse, somebody puts a wire, and they continue to use the electricity, and UEB, because they're inefficient in terms of coming back, they will never notice that for a very long time, which is very different with now, the system that is now. So that was taken away. Now, that is one thing. But you also had to deal with a rotting distribution network. The distribution network had not been worked on properly.
But has it been improved?
Better than what it was. Of course, it can be better. Of course, for us as engineers, you can improve all the time. There's always a new technology coming in the market. You can never say you are up to date. That's why your phone today is the latest. Next year, it is not. Because engineers are constantly thinking about meeting your new demands and also making money. So they come up with new technologies. So we have a lot to do in the distribution sector. But we realized along the way that if we entirely leave it to the private sector, the pace at which it is done in a regulated market may be very difficult, and government needs to invest money to be able to bring our distribution network to where it is. Then finally, the end user, that even when finally, Charles, I give you a connection, free or not, to your house, you still need to use the electricity. It is useless to give you a connection when you don't use the electricity. And your biggest challenge is, if I use this electricity for cooking, will it cost me more than when I use charcoal? Because that's what everyone asks. If I use this electricity for boiling, will it cost me less than when I use gas? And those decisions have been made. And government has put in place programs to encourage use. I will talk now of what we call the cooking tariff. That between 0 and 15 units, you have a lifeline tariff. So for the low-income earners who have demonstrated over time that they consume between 0 and 15, they take a unit at 250 shillings. Now, if you are the kind who uses beyond 15 and you can get to 80, you'll pay the 808 that is available now. Yeah, I'll discuss the effectiveness shortly. Now, beyond 80 to 150, it goes back to 412, from 800 to 400. That's halved. What we're saying that if you can consume up to 80 units, then let's encourage you to consume more. And this is just domestic. I've not yet discussed the reducing block tariff for industry, because industry is much lower than even domestic. So yes, were there some challenges in the past? Absolutely. We can discuss them the whole day. The issue is what are we doing now to move towards a tariff? The president has been very, very strong on reducing tariff for industries. for the entire country. And he said 5 cents, but we're looking at below 5 cents. That's why Karuma and Simba are below 5 cents, among others, because government has invested in concession, has taken concessional loans and invested in this. So we have learned some lessons from our previous experience. But it is completely erroneous for us to say there were no positives coming from that season. And I will tell you some positives. Agrico
Just first, tell us some first. Two.
Agrico is no longer here. Honorables, if you can remember, we were paying nearly 30 US cents. Yes, I know Bujagali could be lower than what it was at the start. The tariff is going to be lowering as it continues, but it is not Agrico. Okay? And we can also look at the number of new connections, the number of people who have access to power. It's not the same. So we have improved. Commercial losses have almost reduced to single digits, and technical losses have also gone down tremendously. I would like to submit at this level.
Okay, good. I want us to now get freer into the discussions, and since all of you have presented some arguments that will form the discussion, the main thrust of the discussion. And I want to also bring in some questions and comments from the public. Someone called Lubangakene Geoffrey from Gulu City says, please, can you help me? Why, if you're paying Yaka, they charge amount due, for example, 3994, and yet you have not been using it? Is it real cheating? It pains me seriously. May you tell Umeme to stop cheating people. That's what Geoffrey is saying. Good evening, Charles and panelists. I'm Bwire David from Isinjiro district. I want to know if there was fund given by Germans or UE, I think European Union, I think something like that, for rural electrification. If it is true, what are the rural high charges for? Then someone called Bonaventura from Namugongo says, thank you, Charles, for this show. Honorable Mara should not lament about the IMF and World Bank. The challenge here in Uganda is that the government brokers, who fix the commissions. That's what Bonaventura is saying. And then someone called Peter Bwambale from Kasese says, why do we have high prices while we are having many power falls? In Kasese main market, a unit is almost 1,400. I need government to investigate this matter. Some of those, Sunday, are your questions. Engineer Nsubuga, why are we not exploring nuclear energy? Your case for hope in the electricity generation and sustainability is too rosy to take. Dark berry, that's what he says. That is, this guy has not given his name. He has just said hashtag darkberry, but it's a gentleman. Then someone called Ambayo Alfred from Arua says, Uganda has a lot of generation sites, more than any East African country. We have wasted a lot of time developing them. I think at this time we should be talking about proper rural electrification, exporting excess energy to the neighboring countries. A lot of money has been borrowed by government for the same. Let's stop dilly-dallying. Let's deliver to this country at the same rate of borrowing. Ugandans are tired of words, promises, that are other than action. Someone said, hi, I would like to see more on solar energy plants like Kabula Soke. Another person here called Marie Jean Odong says, private investment is only interested in profit and will drain poor Ugandans. Frank from Kampala says, Charles, hi. Can the engineer from the Ministry of Energy talk about how they intend to reduce the cost of electricity connection? Isn't that what he has just been explaining? Yeah. And then another, kindly, viewer, if you're sending a message, a comment, just accompany it with your name so that it is easy. This is an engagement and we need to keep it chatty. Yes.
I just want to come in and I want to introduce Bujagali. And I want to
no,
relate.
just a minute. I wanted to first read the number of messages, and then I will come back and see whether we start now, because I needed us, before we go for the break, I need to bring in the viewers as well. This one says, Charles, let engineer tell us whether if UEDCL didn't have engineers, because his explanation presupposes that Omeme engineers are better than UEDCL. Engineer Nsubuga should know that the only difference was Omeme is better paying to the employees. Another one from Lira, someone called Ivan says, Uganda is importing, but nationals are refugees in their own country. I don't know whether I've understood that. Okay, let me take three more from different places. There is one. Let me take some three if I can get clear questions. Is the government using National Water and Sewerage Corporation and Umeme as a strategy to disable people economically, such that, because both utilities can be too expensive locally? This one has been asked. Someone from Lira says, no, from Katikara, what if UEDCL condemns? This is not clear. Kindly, if you're writing, kindly let it be clear. I see a message here from someone in Dubai. I see from Mutukula. The Dubai one is not very clear. The one of Mutukula, Charles, I salute the members on the panel. In the business world, one can choose a high-end clientele, therefore selling his product or service at a premium price, and only sits to wait on his type of clientele to walk in, or choose mainstream clientele where you go out there and look for those customers by head hunting and get them on board. This way you sell to a huge customer base at an average price, thereby registering a huge sale, than selling at high price with a few high-end and not making out much and losing the social responsibility. This is what Umeme championed for long until today. Silva from Mutukula. I'm going to take now two more random. The messages are coming in, and but we need to just this one from Frank in Kampala was asked. Tom in Lira, kindly ask Engineer Nsubuga to explain the enormous cost of one pole service connection. I got to know that one pole costs about 400,000 in the country, but the said pole is passed on to the citizens at over 5 times this cost. That is Tom from Lira. Too many messages. This one says, Charles, I live and work in the mighty city of Arua. Ask Engineer Emmanuel to get Wendreko out of the West Nile.
Thank you.
Secondly, take Nyagak out of West Nile. I can understand. Munduru will explain better this. I think
private,
the frustration of the private
power producers.
The frustration of the people with them. I am Asaf Tumwine. The government should not liberalize the energy sector because those private energy enterprises are all about maximizing profits, not providing the service to the people. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your messages. I will read more later. Keep them coming. I know there are so many, really so many, and I want to thank you so much for joining in the discussion. You're part of this, and this is about you. I'm going to request that we go for a break. Bujagali to touching on Karuma and also Meme as we answer some of the issues that that are still gray in the questions and comments that I have gone through. Let's go for a break. Keep it behind the headlines. This is it. It's a discussion on the energy sector. We will be back soon.
Talk with freedom. Get MTN Freedom Voice Bundles that don't expire. Dial *100 *21# or my MTN app for more bundles. Together, we're unstoppable.
This isn't just a girl. She is the future. This is a teacher, a doctor, a community leader, our future president.
She is our family's pride, and as her father, I will protect her from child marriage and talk to her about the dangers of teenage pregnancy. We each have a role to play in empowering our teenage girls to protect them from child marriage and pregnancy, because when we empower them, we empower our nation. Protect the girl, save the nation.
Take action. Report any case of defilement or child marriage to the police or call Sauti 116.
The Chillax bundles from Airtel have been upgraded. Introducing Voice Chillax bundles. No validity, no expiry, no worries. Dial *100 *1#, select voice bundles and choose your preferred Voice Chillax bundle today. Talk longer with loved ones across Uganda with Voice Chillax bundles that don't expire. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Do you know your architect? Is your architect registered? An architect in Uganda is one registered with the Architects Registration Board, ARB. ARB is a statutory body mandated to regulate and maintain standards and practice of architecture in Uganda. Save money and life that is often lost in collapsing buildings as a result of employing quacks to supervise your construction sites. Remember, only registered architects have professional indemnity in the event of loss of your property. To learn more about the benefits of using a registered architect, visit www.arbuganda.go.ug now, or call us on 0781 498 823 or find us at PKF Building, Kira Road, Kampala. ARB is here to ensure professionalism in the architectural industry.
Gentlemen, and lady, we are back on air. This is Behind the Headlines, and the discussion is government taking back the Owen Falls Dam and Kira power stations 20 years after it gave them away, 20 years after UEB was unbundled. The big question is, has there been any progress? Have the power tariffs reduced? And the answer that has been coming through is that no. We're looking at value for money. Do we see it? What has been happening? I wanted to bring back Honorable, but there are some business persons from West Nile who have sent me specific messages. And they're saying, thank you very much for this informative program and this particular one on energy. So Robert Ejiku says, I thank the panelists on the show, and particularly I want to thank Engineer Nsubuga for the elaborate explanation of what happened and is going on in the energy sector. But can he, in the same vein, explain why we build generation plants whose power we cannot evacuate? Is it also true that government pays for the power that is not evacuated from those plants?
Yeah.
To be specific, the Aswa Dam in northern Uganda. This is Ejiku Robert, is from Arua, but he's sending this message from Kampala here. And then Professor Tikodri, he was a minister and he does a lot of work. He did one of the things he did is a study on the power sector reform as well. He says, Omara is articulating exactly what I said 20 years ago. At that time, the fellows were out to obliterate UEGCL out of existence and instead have a desk at Ministry of Energy. My team resisted. Had they succeeded, we would not have UEGCL with the current capacity to receive the concession back on behalf of the country. Some of us suspected then was to create a situation where today concession would have been received by private, he puts it in inverted commas, usual Ugandans. That's what former minister is saying.
Yeah.
But good discussions going through there. I don't know whether you want Suga, but Honorable, let me first bring you, and then very fast, you said you were interested in touching on Bujagali question and whether we are getting value for money from Bujagali.
Charles, I just want to publicly appreciate Engineer Sani and the level of knowledge and talent he has in the energy sector. So I believe that Uganda has made progress in building human resources. And what we just need to do is to redirect his energy and talent to serve the country now, not the private sector. I am absolutely very pleased, Charles, that we are taking over power generation. We are, I think, about to complete Karuma, which is government-owned. So plus this one here, it means, therefore, that what we will be dealing with are purely operational costs. We would have run the repayment programs for Kira. And so, therefore, what I'm interested in is that the power tariff to the user, to a Ugandan, must now be extremely low. But I just want to explain to the viewers some of the difficulties we are experiencing currently on the account of the contracts we signed 10 years ago. For example, Bujagali. I was part of the committee, a select committee that looked into Bujagali question with Honorable Herbert and a total of 9 select committee members. So here is the scenario. So the Bujagali Power Energy Limited put in only 179 million US dollars.
179 million.
Yes. The Ugandan government put $20 million, and the $20 million was the valuation of the resources we had at Bujagali.
Why are you calling 179 million only and 20 million you are calling it normal?
No, I have a reason why I'm saying so.
I want people to understand.
Yeah, so that was equity, the equity contribution.
Okay.
Uganda $20 million, and Bujagali Energy Limited 179. The rest of the money was borrowed. I would think about $570 million. $590 million. Now, during the construction period, because Bujagali, in the purchase power purchase agreement, we agreed that Bujagali will take 19% return on equity. So in year 1, Bujagali said the alternative benefits, the alternative cost of us investing in Uganda is 19% return on equity. Whether there's production or not, from day 1, we are calculating that return. And that return at 19% equity, interest amortized over the period of construction, of the 5-year period, Bujagali received, actually in value terms, $210 million. 5 years construction. You just imagine that level of return. 5-year period, you put only $179 million. In 5 years, because you have negotiated very well, or you basically got a freebie, in 5 years they had their amortized interest on their investment.
Can you speak to my viewer?
Yes.
When you say amortize in financial terms, what are you saying? Please, my people are not all MPs.
The money has grown.
And they're all not financial
the
guys.
money, that's $179 million. The money has grown over the 5-year period. The interest alone was actually now $210 million, much higher than the money they had put in.
They invested.
So by the time they finished, their total equity was, or their money in the business was the 179 plus the 210. So that amount comes to what? $390 million in just 5 years. That's their total thing. Now, then they use that.
They call it the future value.
Future value of the
investment.
Of the investment. So now that is the amount on which our electricity regulatory authority used for what we call tariff calculations, to make it very simple, where at which they calculated capacity price. Yes, capacity price. Now, but also after the launch of the production, when the production started, within 3 years, Bujagali took away their money from the investment. $169 million. Remember,
they took 169.
They only left $10 million. They only left $10 million. They took away the $169 million. They went away with it. But our friends here,
from Ministry of Energy.
Energy continued to calculate tariff at $390 million. You just imagine somebody comes and said, we work with you, I'm putting $20 million, you put, I put 50, we start a business. Then in the middle, I said, Charles, me, I'm taking away my money. Will I continue in future to receive dividend at the same amount which I had invested when I actually had removed my money?
Should be cheating if it happens.
So we did the calculation and work out the things, and we realized that.
Did you work that with the energy guys?
We worked out those numbers. It's part of our report. So the Bujagali contributes to 40% of the tariff cost in this country.
Currently,
yes. Now, if at the moment our friends are calculating power using a wrong benchmark or figure, so you are paying for power expensively over a non-existent equity in the business in Bujagali, because Bujagali took away their money. And we looked.
Can you allow Nsubuga to respond to this question? Because Nsubuga understands this issue.
Nsubuga will say that in project finance, there are certain parameters which is agreed. I'm a project finance guru myself.
Absolutely.
So now, but if the question that we put, and we put all these things under test, we went back to school, as I said, to do the numbers. We said you can never claim to have an equity in business when you have removed equity, because in the contract, in the power purchase agreement, the issue was the equity in business, equity. So if your equity at the time of the 5-year period, including the amortized, the future value now, is $390 million, and you went ahead and removed $169 million, you can't claim that you still have $390, even if you're doing project finance.
Nsubuga, do you have the answers, some answers to this? Or an explanation?
And let me finish the explanation, and then you can come in.
He's preempting you.
And on the basis of that, Charles,
yes,
the power cost that is coming from Bujagali is, I think, 8 point.
Yeah, it's reducing.
No, it's 8.7.
49.
8 point what?
49.
49 cents per kilowatt hours. But if, with the calculations that we have done, and by the way, the future value, the amortized interest of 210, we should have taken a nominal tax rate of 30% before we could even wrap it up on the total equity, including the initial investment and the interest value, which was accumulated. We should have taken a nominal value of 30% on the profit.
But we are not taking.
We didn't do that. And that amount comes to about $69 million.
63.
$63 million.
That's over how long?
Over the 5-year period.
Over the 5 years.
We should have taken that nominal value.
And does URA know this?
URA knows about, I think URA knows about it, and this is now a subject of, we will ask the Auditor General to do a thorough investigation. By the way, in the contract, they didn't allow the Auditor General to audit Bujagali.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask Nsubuga. Nsubuga, would you want to take a comment from Honorable Herbert and Munduru on the same?
Yeah. And I want Honorable Herbert to make a submission before he comes in.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So Charles, let me just summarize like this, that the current tariff from Bujagali is 8.49 cents per kilowatt hours. Now, with the calculation we have done, the power tariff now should be 5.72 cents.
Which would fall at around the amount
that the president has been talking about.
For.
It should be there.
Yeah.
And then even if, because we have been given, in addition to this, by the way, we have been given them a tax waiver, 30% tax. We have asked the government of Uganda, we said, okay, don't pay even the tax. Even if we take back the 30%, we said, Bujagali, pay us taxes, the tariff would still only rise up to 6.55 cents per kilowatt hour, much lower than the 8.49, which currently we are paying. And I want to emphasize again, Bujagali contributes to 40% of the total tariff for the country.
The tariff burden.
I would want my brother to contribute.
Thank you. I want to add from my honorable colleague. Actually, I must say the Bujagali issue was very unfortunate. And to me, it's a shame to those who were involved at that time. When you read the power purchase agreements...
You mean involved how? The negotiators?
The negotiators.
Are these our lawyers?
The negotiators, those who signed the agreement. Because when you read through the agreement and its amendments, you will find that...
4 amendments, 3 amendments.
The 4 amendments. You will find that this agreement benefited, and it was actually intentionally to benefit the promoters or the sponsors. They were done in such a way that they are skewed. Whichever clause that was put there was meant to benefit the sponsors. Now, the first thing we start with was the 19% rate on return. Now, the 19% rate on return was actually very high compared to the bank lending rates of 6.25 at that time. And first of all, it came in the prospectus. Because in 2004, government of Uganda gave out a prospectus to attract sponsors. And it had actually capped that the return on equity should not be above 20%. Now that gives the sponsor the room to put it to 19%. Now 19%, it is very, very, very high. That's one. Two, when you look at what happened, in the same power purchase agreement, they put a formula on the computation of capacity payment or capacity price. Right. And now this capacity price gives how the tariff is going to be determined. Right from payment of debt, payment of interest on debt, payment of term equity and return on equity, miscellaneous charges, maintenance and operations, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So that forms what we call the tariff rate. Yes. Now, that 19% constituted 52% of the total capacity payment, right? And this was the payment to the owners or the sponsors in terms of payment on their equity. Interest on loans on debt was about like 19%. Interest loan repayment was about 22%. operation and maintenance and other charges almost was like 6%. Now, what are we seeing? We are seeing a situation where government would be losing all the money that would be generated, and the result of the final consumer going to the sponsors. Now, what he has actually said is that when they came in, they brought in $169 million as preference shares, and they called it Class B. Now, the preference shares Class B mean that they can be redeemed anytime, but they never indicated in agreement that at a particular time, these preference shares would be redeemed. Then they brought in $10 million as the ordinary share capital. And the government contribution of $20 million was put as Class C. Now, Class C shares meant that the government of Uganda has no voting rights in Bujagari. That's one. Two, it meant...
Yet it has equity.
Yes, $20 million.
But without any
voting rights. And it will never earn any dividend on that money until all the debts have been paid.
Debts and interest.
Debts and interest, they have been paid. And also in the same agreement, they said this project will be handed over to government after 30 years at $1.
What?
That the project of Jagari will be handed over to the government of Uganda after 30 years at $1. Meaning that the Jagari will be generating power, and it will be sold, paying off the debts and the return on equity for 30 years.
And they would
for
have
$1.
They would have made $2
now,
billion.
After 30 years, that's when they would have given it. They would give it over to government of Uganda at $1. So what does it mean? From what he's saying, the computation they made, first of all, 179 million was injected. Okay, they made what they call a future value of money, and made an interest of 210. That between 2007 and 2012, when the project was commissioned, this money they invested in should have generated 210 as interest at 19%. Right? Therefore, in order to compute their return on equity for the next 30 years, they would add this interest plus the equity of 179. Then, based on that, use it to compute return on the return on equity.
Yes.
So that's what they did. Now, and unfortunately, what is trying to explain that if you are able to provide an interest in 5 years of 210, this is an income that should have been subject to tax.
Yes.
So,
but they are not.
They didn't tax it.
They are not paying.
They didn't tax it.
They did.
What I'm asking is government following those taxes?
That's what we discovered.
Does it try to?
No, it has not. Government has not, and this is what we actually discovered.
That's what we are telling.
So what happened is this: is that
have this matter has been brought to the attention as Parliament? Have you brought it to the attention?
Yes, we have discussed it.
Have you brought it to the attention of the President?
Yes, we have.
What is his response?
We are still waiting.
So,
we'll let him finish.
Let me finish it, because I want to summarize it.
Yeah,
so
I need him to respond.
So what happened is that,
also to bring
monthly payment of government of Uganda to Jagari in terms of the equity and return is about $5.5 million per month. Now, for the 10 years so far since 2012 to date,
over 20 billion.
For the 10 years so far since 2012 to date, government has paid $671 million out of an investment of 179. But that investment, 179 million, $169 million was removed between 2013 and 2014.
So in other words, it is investment of $10 million.
$10 million.
This is the colorlessness we are talking about.
Now, so government has paid 679. And we are saying, when we went back, we said, assuming government was to compute based on tariff, on equity, by after removing the tax, and then after removing whatever they withdrew from the government should have paid 242. And that results into a loss of $329 million for this time. Now, if they were to continue with this and go up to 2042, when they are supposed to hand over the dam after 30 years, paying at $5.5 million per month, government would pay $2 $2 billion.
$2 billion.
$2 billion, 14 million plus.
Which is about 8 trillion shillings.
Yes.
So at the current rate, at about that.
At the current rate. And we are saying this should not have happened. But however, why I'm saying that it's a shame.
Someone is asking that can Bujagali be penalized for this cheating?
And this is what we have recommended. But it doesn't stop at this. In 2018, due to pressure from the road shading and less power, the president, and high tariff actually, the president at the summit of heads of state in Ethiopia requested the president of African Development Bank and asked, how can we reduce this power? So the president of the bank gave a note. When the president reached here, he tasked his ministers of finance and energy to look at it and see how can we reduce this tariff from 13 to 5. And at that time, what they came up with, there were two things. One, they had already got a tax waiver from Parliament in 2017. Now that tax waiver from Parliament reduced power from 13 cents to 10.3 cents. So in order to reduce it far down, they said, no, what we need to do is to do a refinancing agreement. Now the refinancing agreement was done, the agreement is of 16th June 2018. Now the funny thing with the refinancing agreement, which viewers need to know, at that time the outstanding loan was $423 million at that time. And this loan was to be paid by 2023.
Yes. By this year.
By this year. But the refinancing moved the loan from 2023 to 444. Right? And it had a commission, refinancing commission of $23 million. And insurance of $38 million. So the actual money that was disbursed by these banks to
liquidate
was $403 million. Now what does this mean? Now they extended the repayment period from 2023 to 2032 for another 15 years from 2018. Now when you look at what would be paid from within that date for the next 15 years, government of Uganda will have paid 675 million. Yet, it will have completed the loan of 423. So the difference between 423, which was standing in June 2018, to what we shall have paid by 2032, 675, this is almost $255 million that will be lost as a result of negotiation
or
refinancing.
Yes.
Now, we are losing insurance, we are losing commission on refinancing and paying these advisors, financial advisors, blah, blah, blah. All 9 million was also paid. So we are saying that if this was not done deliberately, I can't imagine people of brains like Sunday here to have sat and negotiated such a deal, and the government loses.
Certainly looking at Sunday, it looks like he came when this thing had already taken place.
Charles,
but he's going to respond.
We had paid that 10-point-something cents per kilowatt hours for a very long time. We could have continued with it, bought a burden, and finished by 2023 by now.
Yes.
Now, but some tricksters came and said, let's refinance this.
Okay, I want to bring in Sunday, but before Sunday, I want to first bring in Mercy. As a lawyer, this is your sector, Mercy. Someone is asking, and I want to, emphasize their question. Who is responsible? Who must answer? Can we still redeem on behalf of government of Uganda, for the people of Uganda, this loss, massive as it is?
I think in my opening remarks, I already pointed towards this direction, that we can sit here and talk until the cows come home, but there's been a pattern in terms of how power purchase agreements have been handled. Not just this one, the one with Umeme and several others before, where you enter into an obscene agreement that literally removes government responsibility or their stake in these agreements to a level where at a certain point government finds itself in a difficult place, one, of financial loss, two, even the cancellation of these agreements is difficult and restrictive because of the terms that have been put within these agreements. So whether government chooses to pull out or stay, they will still pay. They will still lose money. And for me, I want to believe that these things are deliberate by a group of power brokers who have made it a business to take advantage of these processes to put government in this position, because it cannot be consistently coming out in different agreements. And if it were not, by the way, I want to commend the committee, because this was one of the best done reports that really went to the bottom of what the problem is, with precision and very clear recommendations. And if you look at the recommendations within this report, but also the findings, you realize that the problem began at the point of framing this agreement. And then within there are different agencies that should be accountable. But you wonder, at what point did we get here without these agencies noticing that there's a problem? Because within there, we have URA. Within there, we also have other regulatory agencies that should have, or that ought to have, recognized that there's something happening within the framing of this particular agreement. But until this expose, this has been going on, and it could have gone on much longer. Government would have lost more money than it already has, because that is the direction towards which it is headed. If I go by what engineer stated earlier, the only hope we have in this moment is in what government will choose to do better going forward in terms of these agreements. Because the way these agreements are done, sometimes there are also external parties who really take the interest of the private companies before that of government. And at that point, you realize that government is blindsided in these negotiations. And therefore, the terms that come out, but also the entire regulatory process is flawed from the onset. And so at the point at which a report like this is recommending that URA comes in to, revisit these dealings, by the time it is calling on the IGG to take interest, in investigating these issues that they have discovered, you realize that these are deeply rooted issues or systemic challenges that have been infiltrated within the system. Of course, I know engineer is going to give us their technical explanations to this, but I must say what I said earlier, that we are grappling with systemic challenges that have a lot to do with accountability from the side of especially these private companies. If they're not under declaring, then, taxes are being miscalculated, which is deliberate, because for this one, even if you did it logically, at least from the report, they tried to do both ends, from their own layman perspective, but also logically, if they even had to apply the logical means to these calculations, it would still at least result into reduced tariffs. But we're still paying high tariffs, but at the same time, government is also losing money in form of the taxes that have been evaded. But now, because we have these agreements in place, in the language of these agreements, it's very difficult. Government has the buyout clauses in each of these power purchase agreements is immense. So you'll still lose money anyway, even when
you just say that I'm out, I'm
you cannot just,
getting out.
You cannot just say.
I'm a sovereign state. Where will you? Can you arrest government? That's what the ordinary person would be asking.
Well, no, you cannot, because the buyout clauses are just as bad as they're just
they will attach national properties.
Precisely. So you realize that government also finds itself in a very difficult place, and that's why some of these difficult decisions are coming now. But for me, I am glad that all of these things lead us to thinking about where we want to go, why the sector is where it is today. And also, I believe that part of what has to be done is to get into the bottom of the negotiators on behalf of government that are involved in this process from the onset. How do they get us to this place? There has to be some form of accountability, because we cannot keep talking about it like it is ghosts that negotiate on behalf of the government of Uganda. They are actually, key players in that process that ensure that government gets the best out of these agreements as possible, something that can help us move forward or reform the sector. But from what we see now, increasingly, it is the same pattern. These were the same discoveries that the ad hoc committee of Parliament in 2011 did when they examined all the agreements, including the one with Umeme, including the one with ESCO, and each one of them had a flaw, a major flaw that put government in a very tricky position like we are in today. So if this was 2011, today this is 2023, and we're still seeing the same pattern, that means that there is a systemic issue that we're failing to see. And I hope that Engineer in his response can perhaps open our eyes into why this has been a pattern, because I know this is not an isolated case. This is
related to this, someone called David says, thank you, Honorable from Otuke, for opening our eyes. Ministry of Energy should apologize to Ugandans for making us pay high tariffs for electricity. This country is full of thieves. Please, MPs, help us and unearth these fellows. Engineer Nsubuga, you have had the presentations of your colleagues. Let Nsubuga
I wanted to give you some numbers so that he can respond to it.
Why don't you? You have overbombarded him. Let him first respond. Let him. I'm giving him time to respond. And is it true that the ministry? Would you think the ministry is right to be asked? Is it right for the ministry to be asked to apologize, or is the mistake somewhere else, Engineer?
Thank you, Charles. And the very numeric presentations given by Honorable Omara and Honorable Taewa, and legally supported by
legally supported.
So I am now in trouble. I'm in the dock. But you see, without contradicting any institution of government, I must first of all tell David that our wish and our prayer and our work, this is David from the last person who sent a message, our target is really, we feel the need and we are working towards lowering the tariffs of power. So it is not like we sit back and we are paying the same units as you pay. When we leave our offices and we go home, we don't get preferential tariff. We pay the same. So the pain he feels is the same pain I feel.
But just imagine if just for as you know,
yes,
just imagining, if I take 100 billion, okay, let's imagine that's too much. Let's say if I take 100 million, and then I go home and I have a bill of even 10 million, I don't mind paying because I have benefited already, as opposed to maybe Council Mercy, who has got nothing out of it.
I don't even have electricity.
There is doesn't have electricity, perhaps. That's the deal.
You don't?
No, we don't. That will be
solar?
my last question.
All right, fine.
West Nile, they're talking of West Nile.
No, West Nile we shall handle, but you know, we made progress there, which we shall be able to update you once we're given the opportunity. I must say something categorically. Systemic or not, I am unable to verify that. You know, that will require investigation to find out if really these decisions were made intentionally to fleece the public or not. What I know is circumstantial, that at the time of negotiating some of these deals, our country was not where we are today. The circumstances were a bit different. I do not know what sort of nerves and the level of jittery that the guys who were in the negotiation room were in. Also, I cannot categorically say good or bad, because you see, what the ad hoc committee of Parliament has done is a very good report, and I agree with Council. They've sat down, they've called us. I cannot say they did not call us. They did call us. I participated in some of the meetings. We actually got a whiteboard and we discussed and we tried to put in figures and we disagreed. And at one point we said, okay, this is where we have reached the report. They have to proceed with their work, which was to produce a report and present it. We may not agree with the entire report, but a major part of the report that we feel really needs additional thought and which the executive must definitely give thought. Okay? So, therefore, I am not in position to say it was a good or bad deal or what, because I think circumstantially it's a very difficult situation. Why am I saying that, Charles? Charles, there's something we call the unserved cost of energy. And if any of us lived at the time when you will be told between 7 p.m. and 11 or the next 12 hours, you are not going to be having access to power.
That's what we are going through in
Okay.
West Nile.
I'll come to West Nile, and I promise you we have moved very hard on that one. If you were told that for the next 12 hours you're not going to have power, first of all, you must make sure your phone is charged early enough for those who had the phones at that time. But also you must make sure that other facilities are handled. Vaccines in hospitals, abilities for the economy to run. People are running on generators. So the unserved cost, the cost of unserved energy, is something that we really never discuss. It is easier to discuss the contract that was signed, the merits and demerits, and what could have been done better. But for every contract that has been signed on earth, there could have been a better contract signed. So I would like us to put that in context. What was the cost of unserved energy in this country vis-a-vis what we got? Then also, what was the cost of the diesel engines? I have not, and I would not like to be put on record to say these contracts were great and nice and the best. No, that would be difficult. I'll need a degree of investigation. Maybe spend some time with Honorable Mara so he teaches me financial management so I am able to understand better. Now, let's look at it from this angle. The detail of the Bujagali deal have been given by those who have investigated. The investigation report has been presented before the floor of the plenary, and the executive has taken it up to be able. I think, Charles, would it be right for us to start going back to a good work well done? I feel maybe we need to give the executive an opportunity to address the concerns and recommendations of the Ad hoc committee. I don't think, because we had our opportunity to
it's
present.
of the of Parliament now, because it's adopted.
No, right, of Parliament.
Yes.
So it would be important that we allow the executive to address those issues, because some of those issues are to the interest of the executive. If you say we can earn extra revenue, and it's something that can be proven or that can be, then that would be in the interest of the executive. So I feel, I appreciate the report. We have looked through it. We have provided our comments. It has come back here, but I think they did a good job, and we need to give the executive opportunity to act. But above all, I must tell you, Bujagali deal can never be more costly than the cost of unserved energy at the time and the diesel plants that we took away. But we could have done better. And you see, there's something that we keep saying, oh, but why did you take away the vertical integrated system? One of the challenges we had moving from that sector into the one that we are in now was capacity. Capacity. The ability for us as Ugandans to meet those challenges at that time and resolve them to the tune of an expert international financial manager. I don't know why Honorable did not participate in the negotiations, but
I was not there. If they had called me,
should have been. So going forward, make sure he is.
Going forward.
Make sure he is.
So I feel that we were dealing with, you have a load shedding, you have a deal, you're negotiating. At the same time, it is cheaper than anything else that you have as an alternative, which was the diesel power plants, the Agricos and the likes. So, yes, decisions were made. They have been challenged. Parliament has adopted a report of the Ad hoc. I will be giving myself more powers than I have to start sitting here and saying, I don't want to go that direction. I think let's give the executive an opportunity to look at the recommendations and do whatever is necessary, including apprehending if that's necessary. But I think what is most important is patience and to look forward. Council raises a very important thing. That what have we done when we realized Bujagali was expensive? We did not sit back and say, oh, let the 30 years run. I know it has been challenged how we opted. But was it a good intention or was it a bad intention? Brokers or no power brokers, I cannot speak to that because I do not have evidence on that. The evidence that I have that the purpose of refinancing was to lower the tariff. Now, whether it was done extremely to the dot as Honorable Taiba presents it as being a very terrible decision, or maybe it would have costed us more, that's something that again will be commented on. Because
our argument, Soboga,
yes.
The feeling is that whatever you are going into, you do a cost-benefit analysis.
Absolutely. And followed by maybe
And if you have to do this, you want to reduce power to this rate at what cost?
Exactly.
So, and we're wondering, Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Energy have those brains,
the experts,
that should have done that cost-benefit analysis.
For refinancing.
And yes, for the refinancing.
And you take it even up to the presidency and said, we have done, Your Excellency, you're concerned about tariff price. There is this cost of refinancing. Uganda will be more in the deep than the current thing. Let's run the thing for a few years and we exit in 2023.
What's the, I need to know also for the benefit of the viewer out there, the implication of all this, including the tariff, the high tariffs, but the implication of such a contract to the ordinary person, a business person, name where the person is, whether they're in Barara, in my place in Nebi, whether they are in Gulu or in somewhere in Bali. What's the cost? What is the implication to life, to business?
We're losing so much money.
Charles, maybe, or you're still with the...
Let me go first, Honorable, because I know when you...
Charles, yeah, let me go first. For the benefit of doubt, Sobuga wants to go first.
Because before Bujagali came, those businesses, many of them, and this is again not to say we got the best deal. I'm simply saying many of them were running on diesel generators or maybe shut down.
Yeah, but that's the worst scenario.
That was the worst scenario.
We're not supposed to be
which
there.
we moved away from to where we are. Now, to discuss the merits and demerits, you see, there are two views to the deal. There is the investigative view, which now must be judged. Because once you do an investigation...
But that tariff doesn't need investigation.
That I disagree with you on. I see where the direction you're taking. You're taking, on that I think is slippery, because I think you're taking the direction of an apology, and which I think is not fair to the ordinary person, because I think the argument of that, you know, this thinking that we have been in a very dark hole, down deep, and now we have come to where there is some light. Doesn't matter whether it is just not serious, so that you should be grateful. I think that argument is not fair to the people, because even the investigation, there is what the lawyers call prima facie case. You know, there are investigations where preliminary you can really see that this one, this guy is innocent.
But also,
but for the sake of fairness, let's give him the benefit of doubt.
But also in this case, if we're talking about the tariffs, this does not require investigations because this is a fact.
Exactly.
This is
also
a fact.
The issue of failure to pay tax.
Yes,
this is a fact.
It's a fact.
In fact, someone should just say, please, I am here. Let me first deposit this one as you investigate.
Charles, with due respect for Engineer Sane, during our investigations, when we invited the officials from the Ministry of Energy, and the Minister Kosai was there, he led them, and he actually conceded. The team from the Energy were like an extension of Bujagadi. They were like on the other side, and for actually, by the way, we questioned and said, are we on the same team? Because they spoke as if they were representing Bujagali. That actually worried us.
Actually, we put some on oath.
Yes, we had to put them on oath.
Not me.
I am surprised that the same language is being extended.
No, Charles.
But let me say this, engineer. our investigation are factual. And remember, by the way, we were so angered by the agreement that Bujagali should get 19% return on equity. That alone was bad. We said it's written in the agreement, we can't change it. Then one thing which we also looked at is the capacity price calculation. How they did it, you know, they didn't give us any dividend, they removed our the taxes, they literally removed everything, even based on the shareholding that we had. We said it's fine, let it go. But then when we finally looked down and we came to the issues of equity after the amortization, and after they had removed their money, and we went down to logic. And then we said over the last 10 years, they have been paying our people. This is the Uganda Electricity Regulatory Authority, have been paying Bujagali on the return on equity at $382 million after they had removed their money. So the question we are asking, are you on the same team? Yes. So where we are seated is that, Charles, is that we have overpaid Bujagali substantial amount of money, which they must return. That's number one. Number two is that they, based on the capacity price calculation, on the correct return on equity,
yes.
We should not be paying a tariff cost of $5.7 million, $5.5 million per month. We should instead be paying $2.3 million. And that reduces the power, because now you're saying, what is the impact of this investigation to the consumer? What we are saying now is the power from Bujagali, which is at the moment at 8.49 cents per kilowatt hours, must actually come down to 5.72 cents per kilowatt hours.
Yes.
And our recommendation is that the regulatory authority, Uganda Electricity Regulatory Authority, should immediately, because they're the ones who do the power price calculation and send money to Omeme.
Yes.
They should now put the correct figure which we have come up with. And by the way, the team of the select committee members are not Mickey Mouse people.
No. Very
well grounded.
We went back to school to really get to these numbers.
Yes.
And so there is nobody who is going to do a better job than we have done. So what you should do now is just go get those figures and plug them in, so that you start now remitting only $2.3 million to Bujagali instead of $5.5 million. And then the tariff charges to Ugandans now should move from 8.49 cents per kilowatt hours to 5.72.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that will still, with that tax exemption still there, even if now we decide as Parliament, because we actually rejected that, we are not going to allow more tax waiver to Bujagali. So the tariff will actually be 6.55 cents per kilowatt hours, much lower than we are paying now.
Precisely.
Okay. And so therefore, Charles, the executive, if they mean well, should take action and implement this recommendation.
Okay, good resolution. I think good way forward there. We are left with under 10 minutes, and I need us to start winding up. It's a very interesting discussion, but time being what it is, it's always scarce, a scarce resource. I saw Honorable Herbert wanting to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. The question was, what's the impact of this high tariff to an ordinary Ugandan?
Yeah.
Of course, an ordinary Ugandan, tax affects every part of the universe. Let it be production, let it be general life, let everything. So we are producing not competitively because of the high cost of tariff of electricity. Now, if the tax was very low, it would be competitive. But way forward, when we are doing this research, worldwide we are told that each megawatt of power can be generated at $2 million average. If you will correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the information we got as we did the investigation.
Yes.
Bujagali was done at $3 million per megawatt.
$1 million excess.
Excess. Because the total project cost was $756 million for 250 megawatts. Now, way forward, government should stop going into unproductive PPs, right? And in our recommendation, we said, can't we look for equity elsewhere? Do power ourselves, because what was actually discovered is that in hydropower generation, the only cost is recouping the costs you incurred. If you have already paid that, the cost of maintenance and operation is very low. And you can actually get power at a very low cost. And I think that's what is happening with Chira and Narubari.
True.
Because I think the
less than 1 year.
Yeah?
About 1.2.
About 1.2 US dollars. You see? Because it's our own. So, I think if we want this country to develop, power tariff is very, very crucial, because it applies in every area of our life. And way forward, let's run away from these gold sponsors, from these financiers who are coming in as private, public-private partners.
Okay. Maybe in 1-2 minutes.
We want 2 minutes.
How far is Karuma, the development with Karuma?
Karuma
before you make the point and we...
Karuma is in the final stages. We are doing the wet commissioning, which is really what you do as you bring the plant.
Like testing?
Testing, but we are going to phase it unit by unit. So now the first unit that's supposed to come on board, we have synchronized it to the grid, like you read, that we are able now to be able to test.
That's the first unit?
That's the first unit. But
there are 6 in total?
There are 6 in total. The subsequent units will follow as we test. Now, of course, tests are tests. Sometimes you may test and find that something is not fine and you have to fine-tune it.
Okay.
But we're in high gears in terms of preparing the project for the final run.
Okay, that's fine. Maybe I should take the rest, 1 minute each. Mercy, going forward, and then I will end with Nsubuga, so that in case there are matters that arise, he can respond to them as he closes.
Yeah, energy is really at the heart of everything, and it's at the heart of our development as a country. And I think, having spoken extensively on different subjects around this, the executive, as is, should take very seriously the report that is before it now for consideration, and take up the actions that have been proposed within these agreements to ensure that we move towards reducing this tariff if we're really serious about the development of this country. Every Ugandan feels the pinch of not having electricity at an affordable rate, and I can say that given the part of the country I come from, where I don't have access until now. And I think if I close before saying that, my people are going to strangle me, because it was right here on this show that there was a commitment that West Nile would be connected on 31st of March. And of course that is not happening as is. But what we've been talking about here as the worst case scenario is what we experience every day in real life. So if you talk about not having power for 5 hours, 8 hours, we're still experiencing that up to today, even as we speak about tariffs here and in other parts of the country. So I really do hope that that is something that will be looked into.
Okay. Honorable Omara.
Thank you, Charles. I think this has been a good debate. Power sector is a strategic area of investment for our national development, and therefore should be really, government should take it over. And I'm pleased that these contracts are expiring and the government of Uganda is now taking power generation. As Parliament, we have taken a decision that when Omeme's contract expires, we will not renew, we'll take that one up, and that also will be a now power distribution. Charles and viewers, the adoption by Parliament of the Select Committee recommendation of Bujagali was a great milestone, and I think the onus is now on the executive to implement our recommendations. And if it so happens, then power tariff will go down substantially. And secondly, also we'll get back revenue of about 1.2 trillion overpayments to Bujagali, so we should need to get that one back home. But otherwise, I am pleased to see a well-developed human resource in the person of Engineer Sunday. and I believe with a person like him and many more,
thank you,
the future of energy is well guarded. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Honorable Herbert.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to take the opportunity to thank my panelists and viewers. The future of this country is actually good because when we are meeting witnesses, especially for the Ministry of Energy, like Engineer Sandy has said, the situation was worse. And somebody would say, because of such a situation, we could not even think such repercussions. But I'm now happy the power stations are coming on board, and we shall have even more power than we can actually consume. And that one actually will ensure that the tariff will go down. So, way forward, I think Uganda should take heart. We shall have power at a cheap cost, and everything will go on well. I thank you.
Thank you very much. And Herbert, sorry, not Herbert.
Emmanuel, thank you, Charles. I want to wrap up very quickly because of time, but thanks to our viewers first and foremost for staying this long. Secondly, West Nile, we have we're getting power through the Lira, Karuma, Oluyo. These are new lines built under the Karuma project and supplying parts of West Nile and Adjumani. But we are also doing the transmission line, which I think you're more concerned about, which has delayed a bit, but that is Kole, Gulu, Nebi, Arua. There will be substations at Nebi, at Kole, and at Arua, and therefore Arua is full. And also developing power plants there. We have Ituka solar power plant, 20 megawatts, and we also have a Nyagak 3 to add to the Nyagak that's already existing. Tariff, government has all sorts of plans to reduce tariff. It's a big animal because it is tied in some contracts. But as we phase out, we should be able to do that. But in a nutshell, there's a second generation power reform that's ongoing as we speak. And that second generation power reform is targeted at making us more efficient and managing to mitigate the challenges that we have faced following the first power sector reforms. And we hope that with the support of everyone, we'll be able to achieve the targets that we are set.
Robert Ejiku says you have not answered his question. He asked a question about
generation plans and dimmed energy.
Yes. Is it true that the government pays for the power that is not evacuated from those plants? And he gave the example of a Swat Dam.
Yeah, so the previous...
Can you explain why we build generation plants whose power cannot be, that we cannot evacuate?
It's a multi-pronged challenge. But yes, it is true that our power purchase agreements, the previous ones before now, the ones that we signed, had a clause on take or pay, which is dimmed energy. In essence, if you cannot provide evacuation facilities to take the power away from the power plants, and yet it's available, then you have to pay for it. So yes, it is true that it's possible.
Is that the international standard of agreement?
Largely for areas, for special developing countries and things like that. You see, there are different markets for power plants. There are spot markets where it is spot on, free.
You
and
produce, you buy. You produce, you sell.
You produce based on demand, so that you are always exchanging tickets on, oh, I have somebody who needs so much, can you please be able with that spot? But you can have a situation like ours where people declare the day before that tomorrow I can avail all my units for power. So you should be able to. If you are unable to take, then you may be able to pay. So yes, it is true, we still have some cluster of that, but we are phasing that out. Our new contracts don't have dimmed energy now. Good.
Professor Tikodri is very interested in the debate. He says, I thank all of you guys and for a good debate. Indeed, I want to thank Council Mercy for finding time and coming to the show. Thank you very much, Engineer, for standing up and candidly explaining this very sophisticated dynamics, but most especially that, we had invited, because Honorable Nankabirwa had personally promised that she would come herself, and but then she traveled, so she had requested her colleague Kosai State, but he was also not able. So I want to thank so much, and we join in thanking Engineer Nsubuga. We had a very good one, of
Thank
course,
you.
from you,
Thank
being
you.
technical. So, not to say that, maybe without, I mean, to be honest, I didn't miss the ministers.
Thank you.
The ministers have been political.
They will still have done well. They are informed of their sector.
Absolutely,
and,
yes.
Yeah, but engineer held his own, and I really appreciate. Certainly, I want to thank Herbert and Honorable Omara, Honorable Herbert. Thank you all very much for the great work you're doing. I saw someone from, I don't know whether it is someone from Kiruhura who said, thank my MP, and then for having such a good debate. And then someone from, I think, Kaberamaido, who said, if those MPs cannot take that matter to the president and they take decisions, then I don't see why they should be in their positions. Yeah, so we expect...
Just for information, we have taken the matter to the president.
Okay,
yeah,
and I guess he will take action. I guess he will take action.
He has the script.
Yeah. So thank you very much. And from the entire technical team here, I want to appreciate all of you. I want to really appreciate those of you who sit in your living rooms and watch the show, follow from wherever you are, out of this country, within this country, and to ensure that you participate in this great debate. Thank you all very much. God bless you. And until next week, bye-bye.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
buli munya-uganda nayitinga amakuru marungi. UBC West erina amakuru marungi kandi agali kwesigwa. Leero za porogaramu zaayo ziri omu Runyakitara hamwe n'Orufumbira. UBC West eine tekinologiya ey'omulembe eri kugibaasisa kuhika omu bicweka byona omu ihanga nangu n'aheeru y'eihanga. Tukwatire aha frequencies ezo: Kisoro 97.7 Fama, Kabale 93.7 Fama, Hoima 99.1 Fama, Kampala 105.7 Fama.